Warning, this video contains some slightly graphic imagery that may be sensitive to certain viewers. Proceed with your own caution. Enjoy! I've had a good handful of pets, and they've all sadly passed away. In today's video, I'm gonna cover the stories of those pets, how they all died, how attached I was to them in the end, and I'll also touch on some emotional aspects too. I'm gonna try to keep this video respectful to these animals, so less jokes than usual. This first one was the dog in the intro. He was a pit bull named Simba. My dad loves The Lion King, so he named him after the character from that movie. And another dog we'll get to in a while. Back to Simba. Details are a bit fuzzy, but for what I think was a few weeks, he was behaving really weirdly. My dad caught on he was sick, and since this was during quarantine, a vet came over to check up on Simba. Apparently he had pneumonia, a viral infection in the lungs. Since this was quarantine, we weren't able to get the supplies for proper treatment, so unfortunately Simba couldn't survive. I was 10 or 11 at the time and suddenly hit with the news. Hey Seth, Simba died. I remember looking outside our window and just seeing this river flow of blood being hosed off the driveway by our helper because Simba died by literally vomiting out his own blood. Back then I wasn't really hit hard by this, but now it hits a bit harder because between that time I grew to be a huge animal lover. When I was like 7 I think, I used to play a lot with Simba when he was a puppy. I remember I would submit myself to him and just let him do whatever he wanted because he was a puppy, he wanted to play and have fun. But apparently that wasn't enough to form a big emotional attachment at the time because as a kid I just thought of the sight I saw as being the most metal thing I've ever seen. Simba lived for I think 3 to 5 years, which is really sad because that is way too young to die for a pit bull. Rest in peace, Simba. These next ones, yes, these, I've blamed but have since forgiven myself after writing this next part actually. It was also during quarantine, so I was still 10 or 11 years old. These were the first and only animals I could really call my pets. I was the one who really wanted them, which makes their deaths feel even worse. I had 2 African lovebirds. I named them Angel and Angelo because I thought their white and light blue feathers were really pretty. Angel had laid an egg, which was just sitting at the bottom of the cage even though they already had their very own coconut house. But whatever, I was amazed. I loved it as much as they probably did. My very own birds had laid their very own egg! Fun and relevant fact, at the time, I had a hobby in making stuffed animals using cotton balls, cloth, and a sewing kit that had leftover resources thanks to school. So when Angel laid the egg, my mom said I should make a little soft pillow for the egg to rest on, and I agreed to do it. But I procrastinated and the egg hatched. I got news from my mom, and when I checked up on it, the hatched chick was basically stuck between the bars of the cage, already having passed on. After this, I felt like a complete failure because I could have done something to prevent it. Eventually, Angela would pass on, and long later, Angel, who was actually introduced to another male before her passing. They died before I could form some kind of emotional bond with them or anything. I loved them, but I didn't know how I could get them to love me back. This weight was on my consciousness for only a few days or a week I think, but it was intense. I don't think I was so sad I cried or anything, but thinking about it still made me sick with guilt and a hint of loneliness, not only from their deaths, but also because I felt like I let their lives go to waste. Despite being pet birds, I still saw them like humans. Humans who wasted their lives and died sad. Thanks to me. Angelo, dying way earlier than Angel did, resulting in her being practically a widow for the rest of her life. Dying likely very depressed. And of course, there's their offspring, who couldn't even carry their legacy because it died before its life even got started. This all happened trapped within one cage. Their freedom was taken from them. Their lives couldn't make up for that. They not only died sad, but likely unhealthy too. I didn't observe and keep a close eye on what they did. I fed them slices of fruit, but only occasionally. And I barely even did any professional research on how to take care of birds. Not to mention how stressed they must have been. I just wanted to skip straight to the part where I could bond with them. I didn't know how or wanted to take it slow. To me, it was my duty to ensure they lived rich and prosperous lives as birds. But I didn't feel the gravity of that until it was too late. At least now they can fly free on their own whim. In liberation. I was irresponsible, negligent, just another kid who couldn't take care of their pets properly. It was when I owned those birds I kinda got a taste of what a drunk dad would probably feel like. They won't care or won't take action for their most precious loved ones until it's too late. I didn't trust myself with owning any pets after that. How could I? I had the power to make a difference. I could have done something, but I didn't. I failed not only them, but myself. Though not the most emotionally turbulent experience, it still stung a lot, especially after the chick incident. But it also taught me a lot. Not just to be responsible, non-negligent, and take action, but to foresee the future and always be prepared. Also to consider others and think twice if they really do mean something to you. Something may be precious to you, but you don't realize it until it's too late. This family of birds lived for under a year to 2 years, I believe. Rest in peace, Angel, Angelo, and their chick. And I'm sorry. This was how I felt then, and still how I feel a bit now, revisiting this memory. Thanks to this video though, I've come to terms with it. I've come back to this point, unintentionally fully realizing and embracing the full gravity of my mistakes. I'll use this added wisdom to guide my actions going forward. I forgive you. Me. That was a bit of an emotional roller coaster. Let's lighten the mood up a bit on this video about dead pets. This next one was the predecessor to Simba, Pumbaa, another pit bull. This was a really sad death because it was the most preventable. I wasn't there to see it myself, but I got a brief summarization from my dad. I'll try to visualize it the best I can understand. So my grandpa has a bunch of light bulbs and stuff, and I guess he was placing one near where Pumbaa was. I guess maybe he was replacing one of the bulbs there or something. Meanwhile, Pumbaa was leashed to a metal pole. Not sure how, but apparently there was a wire that accidentally grounded into the metal pole, resulting in Pumbaa getting electrocuted and passing away. I was like 6 at the time and wasn't very attached to Pumbaa. When he died, I remember just yelling, "No!" like it was a movie. I vividly remember this one moment where I was looking at his body just laying there, but unbeknownst to me, my dad and or grandpa were planning to bury him. So later, when I went back to look at it again, it was mysteriously gone. I was always told dogs and animals in general go to heaven when they die, so I genuinely thought he ascended to heaven. In my mind, I thought like a beam of light shone down and brought him up, and I was annoyed that I missed the moment. I forgot how long he lived, but I know I was already a few years old when my dad got him, so he still died young. Rest in peace, Pumbaa. This next one of ours died just recently months ago and was our oldest living dog. She was around before I was even born. Her name was Mobet, which is a name I've never actually heard before except with her. Like I said, she was around before I was even born, so she lived for over 15 years. But the thing is, she wasn't there for us to witness it. She just ran away from home one day and we never saw her again. I've heard some dogs run away when they're about to die due to natural instinct, and of course, she was already old, so it's safe to assume she's passed away. Rest in peace, Mobet. Me and my parents had one more dog. I played with this one the most growing up. It was a dachshund named Chump. We got him from my grandma when I was I think 7 or 8, and I remember really liking him as a kid. He was very playful, but his pretty small size made him manageable and not hard at all to toss and turn with when playing. I remember running around the neighborhood basketball court with him and my nanny. He sadly ended up passing away around the same time as Simba. Same way too. It was also because of pneumonia, and since it was during quarantine, we couldn't treat it. I remember feeling a sense of loneliness when he passed away because Trump was the one I had the most memories of up until that point. Rest in peace, Trump. That concludes my stories. Growing up, I've always been more attached to actual human beings than animals. I was way more emotional whenever my nannies would leave, which is probably why I didn't really cry for these pets, or even feel the urgency to take care of the birds properly. Which has changed. I've grown to absolutely adore animals. Like one time, my classmates called me a dog whisperer for forming a strong bond with a dog very quickly during a field trip, but that's a story for another time. Despite this recent affection, I honestly still wouldn't trust myself with a new pet though, but I'm sure time will tell. With that being said, thank you all so much for watching, hello and goodbye.